life, humanity, and identity. Those are three themes that I find very important to the comic Gunnm, or Battle Angel Alita, and what makes it stand apart from the typical standard shonen comics that you often see. So anyway, welcome to another episode of Comics, Animations, and Movies. As you may imagine, today's episode is about Battle Angel Alita. Yes, Battle Angel Alita and not Alita Battle Angel, because I do want to talk more about the comic than about the upcoming movie, although today's topic was really made because of something I've seen in the recent trailers of the upcoming movie, especially trailer 3, and so I just wanted to create this video to go over that. So a few weeks back, I made a non-spoiler video with regards to the third trailer for Alita Battle Angel, and during that time I did mention concern that I had with regards to this particular scene in the trailer.
Does it bother you that I'm not completely human?
You are the most human person I have ever met.
Now it is a very moving scene, and I could understand why the producers put this sort of scene into the movie. However, it does still keep me concerned with regards to the way it's portrayed, or the way Alita's portrayed, because I've reviewed this even after I made the last video. I still feel that this is very much out of Alita's character. Unfortunately, it also simplifies the situation with regards to how she looks at life throughout the entire comic. At least I feel this way, and so I wanted to make this video with regards to the discussion points for this. Now, I do want to thank a few people with regards to some of the discussions I had after the first video, which made me open my eyes and realize some of the very detailed intricacies with regards to how you can look at things in the point of view. And so I do want to thank Shoji Wars, Barry Benz, and Chronicles of Alita, because they've brought out some aspects which I was like, oh, this is very interesting with regards to this discussion. It made me look into it and made me realize just how amazing a writer Yukito Kishiro is in showing life in the so many different ways and points of view that you see in the story, that it makes you as a reader even realize just how different things can look with regards to point of view. And in any case, I wanted to make this video with regards to this point because it is something that I'm hoping the movie does, but I'm worried with comments that I see in the trailer. In any case, as you can imagine, this video will be extremely spoiler rich, because I'll be going into the various aspects of the Battle Angel Alita story, and going all the way up to some of the events that even happened most recently in the chapters of Mars Chronicle. So if you haven't read all the way up to the most recent events in Mars Chronicle and don't want to be spoiled, then I would suggest that you turn off this video. But in any case, I will be going into many points of the story in detail, so please watch at your discretion. So one of the reasons why I cherish Battle Angel Alita so much over a lot of other comics is because of the complexity of the story. The writer doesn't dumb down the story for the sake of cliche or mainstream acceptance. And because of that, it doesn't follow what you might call your typical shonen sort of comic storyline, where you have some naive character who's growing and gets better and better as the story goes along. Nor does it follow the typical cliche good versus evil storyline. The author makes the story a lot more complex than that, and because of that, it feels a lot more real. Each one of the characters that comes out is a combination of both virtues and faults, and because of that, a lot of very complex situations happen in the story. And there's a YouTuber named Nick on Planet Ripple who makes a really good video with regards to the analysis of Alita Battle Angel, or Battle Angel Alita, called Alita Battle Angel is More Important Than You Think. And I'll leave a link in the description section. I think many of you have already seen this, but if you haven't, I would suggest watching this because it is a very good video. And in there, he talks about why the story Battle Angel Alita is so special and goes into many things. But in the very end, he talks about the very real personality that a lot of the characters have, especially Alita. And because Alita is so complex in characteristic and so humane in characteristic, it makes you very empathic towards her, and it makes you very much related to the problems that she has. He explains this by saying that, Alita is an attractive female main character, but unlike a lot of other stories out there, she isn't what he describes as a sexy born yesterday sort of character. And after hearing what he explained by that, I do tend to agree a sexy born yesterday character is a character who comes out as a strong, powerful capability character, but the character development is so kind of shallow that oftentimes that main character relies on another character as the main focus point. And so the people who are reading that story or watching that movie tend to relate more to that support character than the main character. And the example that he gives is The Fifth Element, in which Lilu is the really strong, character that's supposed to eventually come down to save Earth. And when she comes down, her character is so shallow that, of course, she relies completely on this other character played by Bruce Willis, who's a taxi driver. This wise old taxi driver who used to be, if I recall, a special forces sort of person. And so, the audience tends to relate more to the Bruce Willis character. And Lilu, unfortunately, ends up being this objectified, sexy, born yesterday sort of character who everybody would like to have because she's so dedicated and respectful of this Bruce Willis character. And when you combine the complexity of the character with the complexity of the situations that happen, where not always things happen for the good and not always things turn out the way you hope, you start feeling like there is a lot of reality or a sense of reality to this storyline. I mean, considering the entire story is this far out cyberpunk story that happens in a very weird future, the things and the situation that occur are so kind of relatable that it makes you appreciate this story so much more. And this relationship, I think, between the reader and the character is very important. And that's why I feel that amongst a lot of the cyberpunk sort of stories, Gunnm or Battle Angel Alita stands out because despite her looks and how she's built, she is a human being. She understands she's a human being and all the problems and the things that she has, including the crisis with regards to her question about what life is and who she is a typical characteristic that you often see in a lot of human beings. And that makes it different from a lot of the other robot sort of stories that are out there, which often does the cliche, am I a robot or am I human? This does not compute because this is just a human personality sort of thing. She is not Data, where she's, the usual comment of, that's a very peculiar personality. I guess that's what humans are all about sort of thing. This is not Alita. Alita is a human being. And because of that, her problems are very much similar to what a typical person would have. So that is why I became a little bit concerned with regards to a lot of the reactions that I saw on YouTube with regards to people reacting to the first trailer and especially the second trailer. In the first trailer, of course, people don't know what Battle Angel Alita or Alita Battle Angel is about. So when they see it, of course, they would think, oh, this is another robot movie. This is an iRobot movie. This is going to be about another standard movie that you often see about robots coming out, and then they start getting feelings and becoming emotional and learning what humans are all about. No, that's not what it is. It transcends far beyond that point. Alita already knows what she is. She knows that she's a human. What she doesn't know is what life is all about. Just like many of us don't know what life is about. The typical, if you Google, who am I on Google, you'll see a lot of philosophical discussions about, people understanding and trying to reassure people about, what their identity is. And that's why I put, life, humanity, identity, because those are typical questions that a lot of people have, not a lot of robots have. Unfortunately, in the beginning, people were like looking at this going, this must be another, BattleBots. This is like BattleBots, sort of thing where she's going to come out, she's going to battle, and then eventually she'll start understanding that she may have a personality. No, that's not that case. She already has a personality from the beginning, and that's what makes it so complex, and that's what gives her, for example, the defiance to go against Ito when he tells her that she doesn't need to become a hunter warrior, and she answers back, no, I'm doing this not because of you. No, I'm not doing this because of what is good for the world. I'm doing this because I want to have dreams and a purpose, and I'm following what I dream for, which of course is what people have, their desires, their goals, their expectations in life, And so she understands that, and right from the very beginning, in the first few chapters, the very first arc, she understands that, and that gives her the strength to go far beyond going, maybe Ito's right. Maybe I should be more a good little robot as he wants me to be. Actually, I don't think Ito really ever felt that way, that he wanted to objectify Lita, but probably he was being overprotective after his experience with Carol. But in any case, the way Alita defied Ito was one of the key points with regards to how Yukito Kishiro was able to develop Alita right from the beginning. Despite she not having any memory, the personality and the characteristics she had were complex enough that she was just as much a human as a lot of other movies where people came out and they didn't have memories right from the beginning. And of course, what was concerning was not really the reactions to the first trailer, which I expected people to think she was a robot, but the second trailer, where people still, although they understood that Alita was a cybernetic entity with a brain, they still basically put her in the robot category. Oh, she's a robot with a brain. She's a robot with a brain. In fact, I can't remember who reacted to this, but there was one reactor who was like, Alita is this android. She's this robot. Oh, wait, yeah, that's right. You guys in the comment section said that she has a brain. I mean, so, let's get real. She's a robot, right? She has a brain, but she's a robot. That's the sort of statements I've heard. And it was concerning because of the fact that, again, one of the key reasons why I felt Battle Angel Alita, the comic, was so important was despite all of her physical differences, her human spirit was so relatable that instead of objectifying her to our eyes, it made her relatable to our eyes. When you start creating this robot sort of entity again, then it basically differs back from being a relatable character to an objectifiable character. And that's one thing I seriously don't want in this, is that this is not a movie about a robot wanting to become a human. And so now we come back to that very scene again in the third trailer.
Does it bother you that I'm not completely human?
You are the most human person I have ever met.
And once again, I will say that this scene is very moving, and overall it's very subtle. So I'm not too upset with it as it is, but considering the situation where so many people think that she's just a robot, objectifiable character, all this scene does is help confirm their argument. Because she herself, they'll say, oh yeah, I mean, she's a robot. Even she says so in this particular scene. And it's even more confirmed when you see this particular scene from the trailer.
I'm not your daughter. I don't know what I am.
I do. You have the most advanced weapon ever.
So although I like the fact that Alita is questioning her identity, which is very typical of what I would say is in character for Alita. She had to say, I don't know what I am, rather than I don't know who I am, which of course then tends to objectify her again. But more importantly, I was a lot more concerned with how they edited the reply from Dyson Ito, where he basically, although if you listen closely, he's saying you have the most advanced weapon ever, which of course is probably referring to the Berserker body. So she's basically a cybernetic human being with a very strong weapon. But it's so subtle and so downplayed that it almost sounds like he's saying you are the most advanced weapon ever, in which case she herself is a weapon, not a human being, but just a weapon. That's what they built her for, is that she's just a weaponized humanoid android entity. And that, again, makes me concerned, because it makes people, again, objectify her into being just a relatively simple character. And my worry about this is that if the producers are feeling that this is okay, that they want to do this because this is the mainstream theme that's going on, then it will very much simplify the storyline, or could simplify the storyline if they're trying to simplify the character. Maybe they'll come out with a much more complex character the moment the audience get there, but it's a little bit concerning that they are going in this direction. Are there going to be other parts of the story that's going to be dumbed down? We already know that Vector sounds like he's going to be an evil character, which of course is again a very much dumbed down version of the Vector in the comic, who was a combination of both light and dark, right? He was a man who was trying to survive in this wacky world and trying to make money, and sometimes that required being evil and sometimes that required being good. And by doing so, it gave him a lot more depth than the standard, oh, I am evil sort of character. I just hope that they do bring out a very complex Vector in this, and he's not just the typical, I am the antagonist of this movie, the way Dr. No was the antagonist of a James Bond movie. No, I don't want some stupid cliche bad guy. Right? That's not what Vector is. That's not what most any of the antagonist characters in Battle Angel Alita are, including Destinova, right? I mean, the only person that I would say during the entire series so far that I've seen who's a cliche bad guy character is that Embody guy who comes out in Battle Angel Alita Last Order. Yeah, he is a power-hungry sort of typical character that you would see, the Kingpin sort of character. And so, yeah, he might be your cliche antagonist, but everybody else, whether it's Zapan, whether it's Grusica, whether it's Vector, or Destinova, had a lot more in-depth and a lot more complexity to them, which of course made them even more real. Once again, they're not your cliche bad guys. I'm worried that Grusica's backstory is not going to be told, and because of that, he's just going to be a cannon fodder for Alita. I'm not sure if they'll give Vector or Destinova or even Zapan the complexity that is necessary so that you could get a lot more complex story that comes out later. Of course, Zapan, you find out the other side of Zapan, in the Zapan arc, and how tragic the whole situation was, that he could not basically redeem himself by becoming that other person that you saw in the beginning of the Zapan arc. And so those types of things were very crucial for me. I mean, that whole irony of the Zapan arc, the whole way that Zapan arc ended was so tragic, with him dreaming about that beautiful life that he had, and he waking up to that beautiful life and going, my God, I thought I had become a monster, which of course he had. And it's this dream that he had, which was the Zapan personality that he was hoping to have, but the situation just screwed it all up. And that was such a tragic story, but I'm worried that these types of parts are going to be kind of left out for a much more mainstream sort of theme. I'm hoping that's not the case, and to be honest, I'll probably not worry too much more about it until we get to the movie theaters and see what the movie is like, but it is something of a concern for me. And so this brings us to a point where I do want to talk about why I made this episode. Yeah, sorry, I'm taking such a long time. But this is something that came to light while I was talking with Shoji Wars, Barry Benz, and Chronicles of Alita. And that is the subtle difference between the question, am I alive, versus what is life? And I feel that Gunnm is much so relatable because of the fact that it delves into the question of what is life. And yeah, so from the beginning, I've always felt that Alita understood that she was alive, that she was not a robot. She never really questioned, am I a robot or am I a really true live human being? But what's interesting is she had all the various complexities with regards to her that brought out the character faults as well as the questions about life. I mean, yes, it's true that she was very insecure about her cyber body, but that's not because of the fact that she was like, oh, because I have this cyber body, I am dead, or I am not a real human being, I am just a robot. No, she had insecurities about her cyber body the same way people have insecurities about a lot of things in life, right? I mean, we as humans are relatively insecure beings and we worry about everything. You know, we worry if we're too tall. We worry if we're too short. We worry if we're overweight. We worry if we're underweight. Heck, if we're athletic, we worry that people will think we're dumb jocks. If we're really smart, then people will worry that, think that we're a bunch of nerds. Heck, if we're popular and extremely charismatic, we worry that, oh, all these people are hanging out with us not because they like me, but just because I'm popular, you know. We worry about everything. And so the human insecurity is reflected right from the beginning with Alita because she's worried about the fact that some of these things may be thought of as imperfections about her. And when she falls for Hugo, this gets amplified the way everybody feels the same way when we fall into a relationship. Oh, will that significant other feel something negative because of a specific imperfection that I have? And she's asking exactly the way a human being would ask, not because she's saying, oh, I think I'm a robot because I have this cybernetic body. No, right from the beginning, she always had that human characteristic. And what's interesting about this is now, if you look at it and step back, it is very true. She is almost all machine with the exception of her brain, but it's not even the brain, it's the human spirit that is giving her something that we can relate to. The brain is just another organ that's in the body, but it's the characteristics, her personality, her human spirit. And in fact, it's the strong human spirit with the desire to continue to go on no matter how much negativity is put on her that makes us admire her so much and makes us cherish this comic so much. I mean, there is so much trials that she's placed at, which a lot of even humans would consider too painful to move on, and yet she continues to go on. She's constantly put on trial with regards to her humanity to see if she will break down, and she keeps on going. The first time is right at the beginning when she wakes up with no memory loss, and a lot of people would have given up at that point. The second time, of course, is when she loses Hugo. You know, and she has a nervous breakdown that makes her, of course, go to the motorball side and start, to some extent, being depressed and hating life for a while until she, of course, overcomes that after her battle with Joshigan. And just when you thought that everything was okay and she was really in a very good sort of situation, all things get thrown around again with the death of Ito. And basically the entire neighborhood, her friends, just totally getting annihilated in Scrapyard City during the Zapan arc. And when she finally overcomes that and says, okay, maybe life can go on, her entire life is stripped away and she's given an absolutely new life in the Toondark. And she continues to survive through that. She survives through that. She meets with Figure 4. All things seem to be going well. She even questions a lot of the things that are going on. And again, she's put on trial when she meets clones of herself, identical copies of herself, that starts questioning her identity again. And she survives that only to get killed by Daisuke, Destinova, to start the Last Order storyline, the new complete series of Last Order. And she keeps on going through that, and we know all the things that are going on. Probably the biggest trial was when she lost her brain, right? I mean, she was given computer chips instead of a brain. And at that point, again, she lost her identity. At that point, you saw her break down so bad when she was like, please give me my brain back. Please give me my brain back. But somehow she was able to overcome it. And because of that, her spirit, her identity transcends just the situation of what we say is, oh, are we human? Well, she has a brain, so she is. No, it's the spirit that we relate to, not the brain. And that is what I realized talking with people like Shoji Wars and Barry Benz, that yes, it is how Yukito Kishiro is very special in showing this in the multiple different ways. So there's multiple different human forms, whether it's a Deckman who is human, whether it's Alita who is human. And of course, Daisuke is a good example. We think Daisuke is human, but of course somewhere in the middle we find out that he is the exact opposite of the original Alita. Alita is basically almost all robot parts except for her brain. We find out that later Daisuke is almost all human except he has a brain chip. And that drives him crazy. And in fact, what's another interesting thing is beyond Alita, we see how Ito evolves. In the beginning he goes crazy, eventually goes into denial, and he has to get away from it. He eventually forgets all about Alita and that past life because he doesn't want to deal with the fact that he has a brain chip and not a brain, and that questions his human existence. Later on, of course, he transcends all that. He figures regardless of what he knows, he wants to survive, and he goes on. He escapes from the clinic where he was working, when the bandits attack, and then he goes up to Zalem to continue on his existence and to help find Alita again. So, you see Figure 4, who's perfectly human. We see Daisuke Ito, who has a human with a brain chip. We see Alita with a cybernetic entity with a brain. And then later we see Alita as a cybernetic entity with a brain chip. And yet we still, at that time, relate to her because of the fact that we transcend. And Yukito Kishiro has done this so well as gradually modifying the story to show our ability to relate that way. One of the ways that we could relate to Alita now, still being human because of a spirit, is because of the events that she had going into the Melchizedek. As a spirit, a human spirit, traveling inside the Melchizedek when her body was destroyed. Of course, she gets recreated once again and is the current Alita. But by that time, we can feel and we could relate that she's a human because of the fact that, heck, we thought she was a human and, a living entity when she had even no body, and she was traveling as a spirit through the Melchizedek. So I find that this sort of writing is very unique by Yukito Kishiro. He completely transcends what you would call the normal and shows us what life could be in the multiple different ways that you see it. And what's of course interesting is even in the end of Last Order, who we identify as Alita and we travel with Alita is not the Alita that we originally started out with. Of course, the original Alita is the girl with the organic brain and the cybernetic body, and she gets a lot of different bodies, but one thing that continues to go on is her brain, which contains her spirit. Well, if you remember, that brain gets basically kidnapped and put into the Melchizedek, and in its place, another Alita comes with a brain chip, and it's this Alita which goes on into the final parts of the Last Order to battle all those entities in the Zot Championship, and eventually we think of this Alita as the Alita we traveled with, but it's the original Alita who's the brain, who's in the brain, who eventually gets a humanoid body and who goes back to Earth with Figure 4, who's the original Alita. That's the original Alita that we started out with in the beginning of the first series, but that's not the Alita that we have right now traveling in Mars Chronicle. And that, I feel, is a really good evidence of just how strong a writer Yukito Kishiro has, because not only has he questioned life, not only has he shown humanity, he's also shown point of view and identity. Although Alita that we grew up with, or we started with, was the original Alita that we see, that's the Alita that goes back to Earth, and the Alita that we relate to now is a completely new Alita, and yet we as a point of view and identity feel that they are the same character. In fact, we feel that the brain chip Alita is the real Alita, and we can't relate anymore to the Alita that has gone back to Earth. And to be honest, I thanked some of the people who told me about the Battle Angel Alita Iron City. I hope there are other light novels that come out that talk about the story of the original Alita, the Alita that went back to Earth to live with Figure 4. I bet there's a lot of interesting stories that she could provide. But in any case, this different point of view, this different ways in which we're looking at the identity of a character is a very revealing thing. And of course, as a final, most recent testament to how unique Yukito Kishiro's writing is we now finally, recently in the chapters of Mars Chronicle, understand where the original Alita or the brain came from. And my gosh, that was a disturbing story. You're like, oh, wow. And you're like, oh my gosh, it makes you question exactly what humanity is about again when you see that. And my gosh, Yukito Kishiro, you're a genius. I mean, we could have had it any other way, but the way he portrayed that in how the brain came about was so disturbing. I was like, oh my gosh. But it was really a testament to how point of view can be made in terms of, again, life, humanity, and identity. This is the Alita that we relate to. This is the Alita that we humanize. And yet even the human version, the brain version of Alita, is something that you could question as being a true human being based upon the most recent chapters of Mars Chronicle. Okay, so, but anyway, this point of identity actually is seen in a lot of other comics, such as Gantz, where, you see that entity being transported from one person to another, one place to another, and you realize later on the comic explains that they're not really transporting this person. They're basically killing the original person and creating an exact duplicate copy of the another person in the new location. And so from the other person, since they have all of the memories of the original person, they just think they're the original person. But the real person that you started out with dies each time they are transported. And that was a revelation for me. That was one of the coolest things I thought about Gantz. And in fact, when the futuristic beings, the supreme beings of that comic, came out, there was that debate going on when the main character goes, yes, but what about us? We're humans. We have a life. We're spirits. We're special. And he said, what do you mean you're, Supreme Being says, what do you mean you're special? I mean, I could create you many times, kill you many times, and that's what I've done. In fact, your friend, that girl that you had who recently died and you're worried about, oh, I could create her once again. And the Supreme Being immediately creates that person, out of the cellular tissues to be an exact duplicate with exactly the same memories and exactly the same personality, so that person will immediately go, am I alive? And you realize, oh gosh, it's this it's her again. And then he goes, and immediately I could kill her again. And he kills, and then she falls down and becomes a pile of flesh. And the guy's like, oh my gosh, and goes, see, that's what you are. That's what your life is. That's what your soul is. Yeah, I could create her hundreds of times. I could kill her hundreds of times. Each time it's a different person, but you'll think it's the same person. And that really brought out a question of point of view. You even saw it in science fiction series like Star Trek The Next Generation, when you remember Commander Riker was, when he was transporting the storm of the planet, reflected the transported signal so that Riker appeared in two areas. One of the Rikers was, of course, the one that we followed during the entire series, who was in the Enterprise, but another Riker who was just as real a Riker was the one in the planet. But from our perspective, since we were the ones who traveled with the Riker in the Enterprise, we thought this guy was just a duplicate, a clone. But if, for example, the story was made such that the series focused on the Riker who was trying to survive on that planet after the signal got reflected back, and then went back after being rescued by the Enterprise and saw another Riker there, we would think the Riker on the ship was the clone or the duplicate. So that's a very interesting thing I thought about point of view. In any case, I'm already dragging this too far, so I apologize for the length of this episode, but I found this whole understanding or this whole question with regards to life, humanity, and identity to be very interesting, and especially with this point of view, how we're looking at Alita that is different from the original Alita, how we think that Ito is the human and Alita is the cybernetic entity when Ito actually has a computer brain, and Alita, the original Alita, actually has a kind of an organic brain. I'm not sure if I could call it a human brain anymore. And all of these things that makes you question exactly what existence is all about. And that, of course, transcends the comic to a whole higher level than the simple shonen comics that you often see. Anyway, I would like to hear from you what you think with regards to your feelings of Battle Angel Alita. This isn't really how the comic is supposed to be sort of thing. This is just how I interpret the comic to be and what I hope the movie will be. In any case, I look forward to hearing from you, and I thank everybody who continues to comment in the comment sections. And in any case, I am still looking forward to a really good movie that's coming out. And let's hope for the best. Anyway, if I think about anything more for Battle Angel Alita, I'll post the comment episodes, and at that time I hope you join us. But thank you very much for watching. Happy comic book reading, happy anime watching, happy movie watching, and as always, Jaya, nice day, everyone.